Hello, we're pre-recording, so anything that happens after the 7th of August, we won't have covered. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Enjoy the show.
What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to the fifth and final Premier League preview show here on ForTheFans with me and my temporary co-host Kino. Today we're going to be looking at Swansea City, Tottenham Hotspur, West Bromwich Albion and West Ham, giving you our thoughts on them. So let's get straight into this. And we are back for the fifth and final show. I'm Jack, this is ForTheFans. We've got Kino. How are you doing, sir?
I am not too bad. Good afternoon, Jack. No Ben again, but, you know, we'll soldier on.
You're like... I want to call you Ben too, but that might be a bit of a disservice to Ben, I'm afraid to say.
Okay, a disservice to me as well. Don't compare me to Ben. Thank you.
Right, so today we've got Swansea City, the Swans, so we're going to be going over to Wales, then we're back to London for Tottenham Hotspurs, then we've got the West teams.
Up to the Midlands, and then back down to London again, finishing on.
We've got the Wests to cover today as well. So, right, we'll start with the Swans. Of course, last year they had a European campaign, and I think that hurt them last year. I don't know, were you surprised and maybe a little bit disappointed by Swansea last year? They finished 12th in the end. I feel as if Michu really tailed off from the form that had kind of made him set the Premier League alight.
Yeah, well, he had a few injury problems as well. I do agree about Europe. I think that you see that a lot with sort of mid-table teams that might get win the Carling Cup or get into the Europa League. I mean, it's been said a lot, but playing all those extra games, and more so in the Europa League than the Champions League, it does really tire you out. And they felt that might have cost Laudrup his job actually in a way, because the way that they tailed off over Christmas kind of led to him eventually leaving. But yeah. Monk's done quite a good job, and he'll carry on the way that they play, and, you know.
I was going to say, he's very much Swansea born and bred. I'm kind of impressed, I've got to be honest, with... There's a few Swansea sales, which I'm a bit... and kind of, what would you call it, exclusions? Not really. The people they've got rid of, the rejects. Yeah. I'm a little bit disappointed with that they've maybe let go, because obviously... Michel Vorm and Ben Davies have both gone to Tottenham Hotspur, and I think they're very... good players and were kind of maybe two of the better players in the Swansea team, particularly Davis, very exciting fullback. But they have got in a few nice kind of free transfers. I particularly like the Bafétimbi Gomis signing from Lyon.
Yes, and also the Jefferson Montero one, who was playing for Ecuador in the World Cup. He played against England. I think that's a really good signing. He's like... his all-round play isn't fantastic, you know. That's why he probably has stopped his development a bit. But in a one-on-one on the wing, he's one of the best. If you watch him play, there are a few better people at a one-on-one situation than he is. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts to the Premier League. Also, Sigurdsson.
Yeah, I was going to say, he is a very good acquisition. Was he a part of an exchange deal for one of the transfers, or has he just been signed separately?
No, I think it did. It was part of the Ben Davies deal or something, or the Vorm deal. It was one of those. Obviously, he'd been there before as well, 18 months before on loan, and he did really well. So he'll know the place, and that'll be quite just a seamless sort of integration that'll return to the squad. Yeah,
and I guess in another kind of almost like-for-like transfer, Michel Vorm obviously going out to Tottenham Hotspur, they've got Fabianski in, which I think is a really good signing. Like, don't get me wrong, Fabianski has never proved himself to be a world beater, but I find it very much the case that you'll have Premier League kind of goalkeepers who maybe don't get given a chance at the club they're at, and they go to kind of a mid-table or lower kind of end team, and because they've got a lot more to do, they kind of shine. If you talk about the best goalkeepers in the Premier League, very often you'll be talking about goalkeepers who play for maybe lesser teams but keep their teams in it.
Yeah, often because they have a lot more to do. No, I agree about Fabianski. I mean, he gets a lot of second string keepers, right? If they come in, especially at big teams, if they don't play a lot and then they come in and they make a howler or two, that is sort of adds to their reputation, and he's had that quite badly, hasn't he? Really, with the whole flappy Hanski thing and stuff like that. But I think if given consistent football, he'll probably have a bit more to do at Swansea than he would at Arsenal. Although they do keep the ball very well, he could. Yeah, you're right. He could do quite well at Swansea. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's a good signing. Not quite. I think Michel Vorm is a very good keeper.
No, yeah, you can't. I don't think it would have been possible for them to replace him. But they have got Fabianski in on a free, and I touched upon Gomis before. Can I just say, Gomis and Boney is going to be a terrifying front two.
Yeah,
they're two of the most physical players. They're not exactly Peter Crouch. They're not gangly tool players who win the ball in the air. They are two powerful men.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Gomis has proven himself in France. Obviously, it's a slightly different league to come into, but he's got a good kind of track record, I guess, in France. In terms of getting 15 goals, I think it was last season he gained or thereabouts. And I think for them, Swansea City, he could be considered quite a coup. Because I think of all the kind of players who maybe have gone out on free transfers, I think he's one who perhaps had a little bit more to prove. And I'm kind of surprised he didn't go to maybe a slightly bigger team. He's actually the kind of player who, in some ways, if Liverpool don't manage to find that kind of Remy signing they've been looking for, I might kind of wonder why we didn't go in for him ourselves. Because I think he could have a very good year for them.
Yeah, I mean, he's like you said, he did quite well in League One last season. Playing for a team as well that is not particularly good at the moment. I mean, he had maybe one or two decent players behind him in Grenier and at Lyon, but he'll probably get more chances at a team like Swansea than he would have done last year. So, yeah, I think being able to rotate him and Bonnie throughout the season will hopefully provide Swansea with the goals they need, because they have struggled for goals at times since they've been in the Premier League. I mean, you see them at home a lot, just pass teams off the park, and they don't concede that many goals, but it is often converting that possession into chances and then finishing them that they've sort of struggled with. So, yeah.
Perhaps the oddest transfer of all the ones involved with Swansea is the loaning out of Michu to Napoli. Obviously, you mentioned the fact he'd been injured a lot last year, and he had that breakout year, and I don't know how to feel about them loaning him out unless they think that A, he's going to get full fitness and maybe play the odd bit of football, or if they're trying to put him in a shop window in Italy.
Yeah, to be honest, although it's gone in a loan deal, I would probably see that as being with a view to a permanent transfer. I'm not sure we'll see Michi back at Swansea again.
He's a very difficult player to value, isn't he, as well? Because he kind of came to Swansea for a very minimal fee, had that one insane year, and there was all this big talk about him going for billions.
Yeah,
not literally billions, just to clarify, but a lot of money in Swansea money. I know that sounds very patronising.
Swansea money. Move on quick.
Last season, obviously, injury ravaged his season. It seemed like he was injured every week, to be honest, with something different. So whether or not he can establish himself in Italy, I guess we'll see. A few other transfers that they've let go. David Ngog, I swear they only signed him was it January they signed him, or was it a little bit longer than that?
I haven't really been paying attention to the career path of David Ngog.
Now, I'm going to quickly find that, because he's gone out. Leroy Lita's gone out. Leroy Lita, I want to love Leroy Lita from the glory days of Reading in the Premier League with Dave Kitson and Leroy Lita getting 8th in the Premier League, first season there.
Yeah. Who else? Yeah.
But no, Swansea City, yeah, David Ngog did sign in January last year. And he made 3 appearances and they've let him go on a free. So I don't know if that was just the end of his contract or if they just jog on and paid it off the rest of his contract early. But that's an odd one, because he played for Liverpool, he's gone to Bolton. I never thought I'd talk about David Ngog as much as we just have in a Premier League preview show. Maybe we should move on. So we talked about the Tottenham Hotspur transfers that have gone to Swansea. Should we talk about Tottenham Hotspur as a whole?
Yeah, let's talk about the Spurs. Yeah. So
they've only made 3 signings, 2 of which have been from Swansea.
I think with the amount of signings that they made last year, they probably didn't need to make that many this summer, because they're still in a way bedding a lot of those in, like Lamella. Hopefully Soldado will have a better year. But yeah, 3 solid signings. Ben Davis, I think, would be a really good one. I was going to mention it in the Swansea segment, but it's kind of good that they've just come one after the other. Vorm, do you think Vorm's too good to play second fiddle to Lloris at Tottenham? Sorry?
A little bit. I'm almost surprised that he's gone there, and I really shouldn't be, because obviously footballers want to earn as much money as possible, but for me, Vorm has kind of become a staple of that Swansea team, and I don't get why he'd want to go from being that first-choice keeper to being second choice unless you truly believe that you are better than Lloris, or at least can really fight him for his position.
Yeah, and I can't see him, taking over Lloris's position in the league. At least, I mean, he might play in, with Spurs in the Europa League. You might play there, but again, I'm not quite sure about that one.
Is Friedel still at Spurs too?
Yes, he is, but I think he's moved into more of like a part coaching kind of role, a bit like Given at the Villa.
Yeah.
Sort of semi-coach, third choice keeper.
Does what he wants on the training ground kind of role. The other player who Tottenham have brought in, a bit of a football manager name, this one, Eric Dyer, from Sporting Lisbon.
Yeah, I must confess, I don't know much about him.
He's 21 or 20 years old. He's a bit of a football manager wonder kid, -9 potential for those who care.
This is why I don't know much about him.
He's one of the rare cases of an English player going abroad.
Is he English?
Yes, he is English, playing in Portugal, and now he's come back to England, which is almost very... We talk about, the likes of Owen Hargreaves, players who go out and get a culture abroad, because English players generally just kind of sit at home on their arses in England and don't go abroad. Yeah, so it's quite nice to have a player go abroad and come back.
I've said that to you before. Like, I think the more we have going out and then, even returning to the Premier League after learning their trade abroad, I think that's good. And yeah, in that case, all for it. So
he's a good young English centre-back. I wonder how he's going to fit into their team, like where they see him, because he played a lot of first-team football in Portugal. I don't see him, beating kind of the current Tottenham lineup when you've got players like Kabul already occupying that kind of centre-back position. But I think long-term, it's good to see Spurs building for the future, because I think I don't want to say they've learnt from last summer, but I think they've realised this year we can't afford to make that many signings. I think kind of Pochettino's coming maybe with a slightly different mindset. He's really going to be looking really to the likes of Eriksen, Soldado and Lamela, players who perhaps didn't turn up last year really to play to his system.
Although, to be fair to AVB, I think had he been given the time to mould those signings, it would be about now again that we were kind of looking at those players and thinking, right, they're really going to kick on. But Pochettino's in quite a good position because he's got those new players a year on. They've had experience at the Premier League, and now can really sort of get them playing in the system that he wants. And they're used to the pace of the league and the way that the other players in the squad play. So he'll really get the best of them.
I guess the other thing is that if they don't perform, he goes, well, they weren't my signings, and can just kind of play it off. Talking about their outs, there's not too many huge ones other than the Sigurdsson deal we've already covered. Jake Livermore's now gone out permanently to Hull City.
Yeah.
The other one, Aurelio Gomez, the goalkeeper, the Brazilian goalkeeper. I forgot he existed. He's gone to Watford.
I didn't realise he was still at Tottenham. I do miss him in the Premier League.
He's just gone. Like he's like an antique that everyone's forgotten about. You think of him as being like I want to say pre-Brad Friedel days, but not really. But he's like, what was he doing there? Did he turn up to training? I just not seen him anywhere.
The Harry Redknapp sort of Tottenham days, yeah.
But he's made a dizzying move to Watford to link up with the likes of Troy Deeney and Forestieri. But this is a Premier League review show, so we probably shouldn't talk about that too much. But that's a bit of an odd one for me, going to Watford.
It's nice to see his name. It's a good mensch.
It is.
Any podcast with a mention for Radio Gomez is a good podcast.
So, Tottenham have not done much on the transfer front. We mentioned their signings from last year. Is there any for you who maybe impressed a little bit last year, or one player of the many Tottenham signings they made that you really look at this year and go, you have got to step it up this year, or as you might be out come the end of next season?
Well, Eriksen was the best one of those that kind of group that came in last summer. I feel he had a decent season post Christmas when he kind of got into it a bit more, and also when Sherwood started playing him in his best position down the centre. It'll be interesting to see. I think Soldado will perform next year. He's too much established quality not to have two bad seasons in a row. Yeah. The really interesting one is Lamela, because so much has been said about him. And his sort of the lack of influence that he's had at Tottenham. He's with now an Argentine manager. Maybe he'll feel a little bit more at home and at least kind of be able to connect with the squad and the staff a bit more than he might have been able to do, especially under Tim Sherwood, who doesn't strike me as the kind of manager that would accommodate a young Argentinian player who'd spent a lot of time in Italy.
No.
But So yeah, under Pochettino, hopefully he can kind of nurture him and bring him onto the player that we all kind of want to see in the Premier League, because he's undoubtedly got a hell of a lot of talent. And I just think it'd be great to see a player like him playing well week in, week out for Spurs. And if they can get him playing, then they're going to have quite a fearsome attack.
I think one of the complaints when he was in Serie A was his lack of consistency. That was kind of the underlying concern that a lot of fans had about him, was the fact that one week he'd be the best player on the pitch and the next week you wouldn't know who he was. That he was there.
A lot of people forget he's only 21 or 22, and you see inconsistency a lot with young players. Now he's sort of been in the capital for a year, and you can, in the same way that a lot of the new signings, Eriksen, Soldado, now they've had time to adapt, and playing under a manager who is the same nationality, speaks the same language, and has come from the same kind of culture, footballing culture. I think that'll really help him, and hopefully he'll sort of get into the swing of things and start playing well next year.
Yeah. So Spurs finished sixth last year, which actually meant they got European football ahead of Manchester United, be it in the Europa League. Do you think in some ways that might actually be a disadvantage, and they would have been better off maybe not having this year in Europe in order to maybe challenge for the top four? Because a lot's made of United's advantage, so I'm wondering if you think it was a disadvantage for Tottenham, or do you reckon they'll just be grateful for European football of any kind?
Well, we saw Liverpool, the best example of that obviously was Liverpool last year, not having any European football and being able to focus just solely on the league, and it almost turned into a league title. But I think with Spurs, realistically, with the signings that the other teams have made, Arsenal have strengthened a lot. City will obviously be up there, and Chelsea. And then you have United, who under Van Gaal will be looking to get back into the top four. I'm not sure that Champions League is a realistic aim, but they'll struggle to get there.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a team like Tottenham, in the same way that you see teams like Benfica, have a real crack at the Europa League, because I think a team like that could really do something in that competition.
I was going to say, who was the last English team to get far in that? Because I'm thinking it might be Middlesbrough when they got to the final. I might be missing a few there.
Fulham under Hodgson got to the final, didn't they? And they lost to it might have been Sporting, but they lost to a team, and they were the last one to get to the final. But I think a team like Spurs could really do something, and it'd be good to see them have a go.
Yeah. So, fans of Spurs, I'm kind of curious to hear what you have to say on Twitter about this one. So if you want to tweet us at ForTheFans, let us know, where do you want to finish this year? I saw a rather funny tweet during the off-season. It was Jesus Navas was doing a footballing Ask Me Anything on Twitter, where the Manchester City kind of PR team had #AskJesus going, and there were a few Spurs fans tweeting into him going, so we know that you can turn water into wine, can you turn Soldado into a striker for us? And I do wonder if there is maybe a little bit of, I don't know, amongst the Tottenham fans, that maybe the players that they brought in last year kind of owe them something, and if that is going to be kind of their aim this year, really, to redeem themselves after last year.
Yeah, I mean, sort of talking about, personally, I'm a Villa fan, we don't have a lot of success. I would, for a Spurs fan, to get into the top four would be good, but I would kind of much rather have, as a football fan, to see my team go for a longer European run. But even though it's in the Europa League, I think a semi or a final, which they could certainly achieve with the squad that they've got, would be quite refreshing, really, because we see a lot of English teams just totally neglect it. It gets quite a bad rap. And if they could really go for it, I think it'd probably make for quite an interesting season for Spurs, even if they might not make the top four. That'd be a risk worth taking, I think.
Yeah. So I think for me, Spurs are forever associated as kind of a Champions League team now. They played in the Europa League for a number of years, and they kind of got a reputation there, and they actually, went for it. And then they had that one breakout season where they finished in the top four. And now, I guess the expectations have been elevated, particularly with the departure of Bale, which I didn't really want to talk about, but it's difficult to ignore. I feel as if, especially with the acquisitions they've made, they are showing the ambition of a Champions League team, and they've got that maybe chip on their shoulder to go out there and perform. Yeah. But we've talked about Spurs a little bit. Let's move on to West Brom, which I know is a little bit closer to home for you as a Villa fan. So I want you to put any resentment towards West Brom you might have aside, and look at this objectively.
You know the team I hate, Jack, and they're nowhere near the Villa right now.
The Blues.
So
The
I don't
Blues.
really mind. I don't really mind the Albion.
Is that the team that didn't have a shot on target yesterday? I think it is. Right. Let's talk. That's a dig at Birmingham fans. I'm sorry, Birmingham. I don't know why I've done that.
I like that.
I'm apologising to the entire of Birmingham here. I'm deeply sorry. Right, West Brom. Alan Irvine's their manager. That was the first thing that when I was doing my research for this, I scratched my head. I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. They finished 17th last year, so they did get lucky, I guess, in the sense they finished 1 point off the drop, or one place off the drop. I think it was a point as well. What is there to make of West Brom this year? Because they've made a lot of moves in the transfer window, really.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. There's a lot of ins, a lot of outs. A lot of new players under a new manager with a very small amount of experience in the Premier League. Although he'd been Moyes' assistant for a long time, not much experience as a manager at the top level.
Yeah,
it could either work out quite well and they'll be fresh and play interesting football, or it could be a total disaster. And the new signings won't gel under quite a sort of an uncharismatic figurehead. I don't really want to have a dig at Alan Irvine, but it's not a big managerial name that you kind of go to a club to play for.
Yeah,
that's the other scenario, and I can maybe see that happening this year, which would be disappointing.
I guess the big transfers then are probably Lescott and Gardner. They're perhaps two players you'd look at and go, they're pretty good signings for West Brom. They're not. I think Lescott probably more so than most. I have no idea how much money he's on, but I'd imagine he's taken a pretty hefty cut there. I'm going to be intrigued to see Andre Wisdom. As a Liverpool fan, he's gone on loan to West Brom.
Yeah.
Because they've lost kind of Ridgewell, who was one of their kind of key men at the defence for a number of years. He's kind of the centre-back you'd associate with West Brom in some ways, and left-back where he kind of slotted in there occasionally. So Lescott and Wisdom for me, I think that's actually going to be a very good move for Andre Wisdom. Of course, he was playing for Derby last year.
Yeah,
I think Lescott is almost like Rio Ferdinand is to QPR. He's that kind of player who's really going to just add an important bit of experience, maybe a bit of drive, and really can be a leader from the back for them.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just touched on Wisdom. I think that would be good for him, certainly to get Premier League experience. He played a lot of Derby last year, and they had a really good run to the playoffs, playing with good young players under a decent manager. But this is a total different kettle of fish now. He's going to be scrapping at the other end of the Premier League. And if you want to see him playing in a Liverpool shirt in the next couple of years, I think this year that he has at the Albion could be quite important in terms of getting used to the physicality and the mentality that you need to play in the Premier League. It could really be beneficial to him from a Liverpool fan's perspective.
Yeah, so Chris Baird has also joined them, the Northern Ireland international. He's a bit of a defensive midfielder. He kind of can play here, there and everywhere. He's joined on free, but he isn't one of the big transfers, I guess. But as I look through this West Brom team, there's a few players here who I have no idea who they are. I'm going to be completely honest. We have Sebastian Pocagnoli.
Pocagnoli he's Belgian, I think, a defender. He might have been in the Belgium squad for the World Cup, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it kind of an established name around Europe.
And then there's a few more on the list. We've got Brown Idiai.
Idiai,
we'll go with it. Jason Davidson, that's a nice name. He plays for Hercules Almelo.
That's the name for Jack, everyone.
And then Christian Gamboa from Rosenborg, who has had a little bit of a fanfare behind him. But to me, there are a lot of players with question marks over them. They feel like, to me, like, I don't want to say this, it sounds horrible. They remind me of Norwich's transfers from last year. Where Norwich signed a lot of players who hadn't proven themselves in the Premier League. Maybe the Norwich players you could say, and maybe a little bit more of a name, but you look at players like Leroy Fer, Van Wolfswinkel, players who had done it elsewhere in Europe and came in with the expectation that they'd make up for and kind of, advance the team on.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit worried.
That's not bad on its own.
It's just a gamble.
Yeah, it's buying a player from overseas isn't a bad thing if they're inexperienced in the Premier League. It's when you bring in a lot of players, as we saw last year at Spurs as well. When you bring in a lot of players that don't know that the way the atmosphere and the physicality and the pace of the game, if you have a group of those arriving at once, that's where you get problems. And like I said at the beginning of this little segment, bringing all those types of players in under a new manager. They've lost a lot of senior players, like you said, Ridgewell, Anelka, Gira, Lugano, Stephen Reed.
And they're players who have been there a while and really they've become
a
core, not necessarily a core, but they're players who have heavily influenced the way West Brom play and represented that side.
Yeah,
and now these replacements are coming in from afar, and I mean it's up to Irvine to really make what he can of this team, and clearly he has faith in the signings he's made. A lot of these players' prices haven't even been disclosed, but I'd be very curious to see how much they've actually come in for in kind of total, because I have a feeling it would probably be 10 million plus at least for the 4 players they've got in. And then, as you mentioned, they've lost a lot of senior players. I think Lugano is a big miss, as is Gira, and Nicholas Anelka. I don't know what to make of Nicholas Anelka. He kind of just does his own thing.
I'm not. I don't think we should get into the.
He's a bit of a mercenary, isn't he? And there's been a lot of drama around him doing weird salutes.
I think the Albion are probably better off without him and the publicity that he would bring towards them this season. Like I said, it's 50-50 which way this could go. A lot of new players, losing a lot of senior ones. It could work well and they could all click, or it could go disastrously.
I'm quite worried for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a West Brom fan, or maybe you know more about the players that we've touched upon, let us know what you think of them. But they are coming from here, there, and everywhere, really. You've got Ukrainian a couple of players coming from Ukraine, Rosenborg, which I want to say is Denmark. Might be wrong there. It might be another Scandinavian country, in which case I'm sorry. Hercules, I believe, are in Spain. I worry. So you said 50-50. Is there one way you're leading more than the other in terms of, is this a season to be worried as a West Brom fan? Do you see them being right down there, or could they have a breakout season?
More towards a struggling season. A lot of the first few months is going to be spent trying to bed in these players, and in that time, I mean, I'm not sure what their fixture list is like in those first few months. But if they have difficult games, it could really spell a kind of a season of very turgid, bad football.
Gotcha. Right, so we'll move on to the other West team. I've got a beautiful quote here from Ben that he's kindly left me about West Brom. He said, Big Sam, some West Ham fans might feel a little bit embarrassed about the fact their club's been led by him, but he does a job and he's a bit like a builder giving you a massage. It might be effective, but you don't want it. Now, I don't really know what that means, Ben. I think I kind of get what he's saying, because he kind of has this smell about him. He has this odour that follows him, not literally, or physically rather. Literally would make actual sense, but Big Sam, he has this stigma around him that kind of, there's negative football to be found where he plays.
Ever since the Bolton days. Yeah, I agree. I actually, Ben, I get what you mean. I know exactly what you mean with your quote. I understand the pains of the West Ham fans, because I would never want Big Sam.
I thought you were going to say you understand the pains of someone being massaged by a builder.
Well, you've got those kind of rough hands on your shoulders. You don't want that.
I can't say I've ever experienced that, Keena. Should we talk about their signing?
Yes.
There's one here who I'm very excited about, and that is Koyate from Anderlecht, the centre-back. I don't know if you know much about the Senegalese international, but I think he's a blooming good signing for them. And then they've also brought in Aaron Cresswell, who's another good defender.
Valencia as well, who had a good tournament for Ecuador, another Ecuadorian coming to the Premier League. Scored quite a few goals, actually, in the World Cup. It'll be a lot. I quite like it after World Cups, because you get a lot of players coming in. It'll be interesting to see how they play in the Premier League.
The other player they've signed is Zarate, who I think's come from Vélez, I want to say, but he signed from the Argentine club Vélez, and he's had spells in Europe before. I think he played for Lazio for 4 years. He's not young by any means, but he's quite an exciting player for them to have, because he's going to be wearing the number 10 shirt, and I think they're going to actually be looking at him for a lot of their goals, particularly with the injury proneness that is Andy Carroll, and I actually think he is a very good signing for them. Last year in the Argentine Premier League for Vélez, he got 20 goals in 29 games. So he's banging them in at club level. The Argentine Premier League, it is a slightly different standard, and it's going to be interesting to see how he adapts to that physical style. But if he's got a wingman in Andy Carroll, maybe that won't be so much of an issue. He
did score a lot of goals at Vélez, and he's only 27, so it does seem like he's been around for a long time. I know what you mean, because he did play for Birmingham, actually, back in 2008. Although he does seem he's been around, he was at Lazio for a long time as well, he could really be a very important signing for them and could contribute with a lot of goals. Bit like although he's playing number 10, it's sort of a Kevin Nolan style. He could play off Carroll and get onto those.
Well, that was an issue West Ham had last year. There was a few games where Andy Carroll got injured and they were playing 4-6.
Yeah,
that was the system, and that. I mean, it doesn't work, does it? Let's be honest here.
It doesn't work under a Big Sam side. Definitely.
No, exactly. You need that focal point of an attack, even if it is just a slightly more agile mover. Of course, Carl Jenkinson's also joined the ranks at West Ham. I think he's on loan for the entire year.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's quite a good, smart transfer for everyone, really. Especially with Chambers coming into Arsenal, I think Jenkinson might be forced out a little bit in favour of giving Chambers maybe a little bit more of a chance. On the outs, there was one young player I'm kind of surprised West Ham let go, and that was Jordan Spence, a player who for a number of years during kind of his junior years at West Ham was very much bigged up as a player for the future, the English defender, and maybe a little bit sad to see him released, really. I don't know what the circumstances behind that are. Besides that, they've not really sold anyone. There's just a load of players that they've just kind of let go.
Apart from Joe Cole to us.
Well, they've just let him go too, haven't they? They've just gone, Joe, you've had a few a year at us. Go out on a free. Go fly amongst the pigeons at Villa.
Don't get injured. We had a pre-season friendly yesterday against Parma. Joe Cole did play injured.
Brilliant.
Things to come.
You got Matt Taylor as well, who they've let go, who's gone to Burnley. I'm surprised they've let Matt Taylor go. I think he's a very good signing for Burnley, which I actually touched upon in the first preview show. But I think he's a good Premier League kind of player for a newly promoted team to acquire, especially on a free.
Very solid, experienced pro. Has been around, done it at, all throughout that sort of bottom half of the Premier League. That's quite a bad way to reflect on his career. But he knows what it takes to stay up. He's been in relegation dogfights as well, which I think Burnley may be touching this year. I agree.
So they've got Nolan still in their team. It feels like Nolan's been around for years, since his Bolton days. Well, he has, as you said, he has been. But I want to say he doesn't seem like he gets older, but to me, he strikes me as a player who is going to slowly start to fizzle out. He's always been that fantasy football option in your fantasy football team, who you stick in if you need a cheap midfielder who's going to get you goals.
Yeah.
He's been that kind of that go-to guy. And Downing's still there. Ben's written this. Downing's still there. Stuart Downing. I don't know what to make of Stuart Downing. Is he a footballer? I feel like he should have become a builder who does massages.
He's DJing. That's what he does.
Is that actually a thing now?
No. This has been for years. He did this at the Villa when he was there a lot. Stuart Downing, he DJs all the parties and stuff.
I was about to say, I've got this image of him doing like the club disco.
He seems like quite a boring person to DJ, though. Songs might be quite boring.
Get him up there with James Milner, kind of wingers that have them. You could call them the wingmen. That could be their name.
And right. But Milner would be the hype man. Getting everyone going.
We need to make this happen. If someone has contacts for James Milner or Stuart Downing, we'll force them together. Like on talent shows where they force groups to form off the best talent. We'll get Milner and Downing as the wingmen. That is a great name as well. Right. There isn't too much to talk about with West Ham, other than the fact that can they really step up? Can they avoid the dogfight that they had last year? Can they avoid that battle, or is this a year where you'd be maybe a tad worried?
It's another one of the teams, along with Swansea and Stoke, that really, in terms of their revenue and the finances that they have, they've got a bit of a glass ceiling in the Premier League as to where they can get to. But I think they're too strong to really go down. I mean, I'd love the Villa to be like that, but unfortunately we're not. Their squads are probably a bit too good to go down, and they'll just be solid. They'll pick up points against the teams that are worse than them. They'll probably get the odd draw or so against better teams, and they'll just be consigned to another season.
See, I think for me, West Ham's season, whether or not they're safe, rests in the hands of Zarate up front. I think if he bangs in 13 goals or more this year, they stay up. I think if he scores less, they go down. I have a sneaking suspicion he might turn out to be a very key player for them, especially with their lack of players in that final third.
Do you not think that Carroll will be able to do anything this year?
I think he might get injured again, to be honest. I know that's a really obvious thing to state.
You get very low odds on that one, Jack, if you were betting, man.
I just don't... I don't want to say I don't rate Andy Carroll. That sounds horrible, but as a Liverpool fan, I've seen firsthand what he can and what he can't do. And to me, I almost just wish he'd stayed at Newcastle. I think he would have been a key focal point there.
What if?
And he flew the nest. I know. Can we go back in time and find out? Someone make it happen.
Yeah.
So anyway,
season of mid-table for West Ham.
So that's your prediction. I'm going to go with higher mid-table. I'm going to go with 11th. I know that's doesn't really make sense in terms of higher mid-table. I associate mid-table with bottom half. Higher bottom half.
Fair enough.
Low. I guess it's technically mid-table. Anyway, shall we wrap things up there? I mean, you've been here for your second preview show. Just a quick thank you to you guys who have been watching and listening. Do greatly appreciate your support over these kind of pre-World Cup stuff. So, of course, we will be bringing you the podcast weekly throughout the World Cup. The show's going to be going up every Monday. That's the aim. What did I say? World Cup?
You said throughout the World Cup. I know you're still in World Cup mode, Jack.
I'm still in World Cup mode. I've still got my Brazilian flag hanging from my wall and everything. Yeah. I'm living in the past.
Throughout the Premier League season.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be cheering on Brazil. I'm going to be waiting for a yellow and blue team to come on, or yellow and green. Right. Let's wrap things up there, guys. Thank you so much for watching, as always. We are available on iTunes if you're watching on YouTube, or YouTube if you're watching on iTunes. It's For The Fans Show. You can search in either one of those two platforms. You'll find us. Same thing on Twitter. We're available at For The Fans Show. You can join our fantasy football team league thing, where you can sign up for free. If you go to our Twitter at For The Fans Show, as I already mentioned, the pinned tweet right at the top of our page tells you all the details you need to know. We also have a Facebook page, and that is For The Fans Show. We don't do a lot there. If you've got any ideas for stuff we can do on Facebook, other than ask for likes, let us know. Keno, thank you so much for joining me during these previews. I appreciate you've come in at slight late notice to fill in. Maybe we'll have you on later on in the season when me and Ben go AWOL or go missing.
Each other.
Or we just have a domestic.
Yeah.
Thank you
to those listeners. Domestics between Jack and Ben.
They happen frequently behind the scenes. We're like always in a tiff. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed the 5 preview shows. We will see you the Monday after the first weekend of the season for the first show. Hopefully you'll be sticking around till then, and we'll talk to you guys in a bit.